Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Got the Venom Symbiot Part 2. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The day before their training began, Mina had made the decision that Izuku and his mother should have dinner together because of how rigorous it would be. So when Izuku and his mother found themselves outside of Mina's house, they were very anxious. It was quite nice, he said. Nothing grandiose, but it was obvious they had plenty of money. He shuffling nervously, his mother mumbling something about her baby was growing up too fast, and sniffling. Before ringing the doorbell, he shook his head. It took a few moments for a somewhat tall pink man to open the door. He had the same black and yellow eyes as Mina, and he had round tube ears. His hairless head had something that resembled an antenna on top, and he wore enormous, thick-rimmed glasses. His outfit consisted of a blue button-down shirt and an odd-looking tie. He wore suspenders with his pants. When he saw who was at the door, his eyes brightened. Izuku became increasingly concerned that Mina might actually be an alien as the man continued speaking in his strange, alien-like voice. Greetings Midoriya units. We're delighted you could join us for dinner. My family unit is in the kitchen preparing the tools meal. I forget you as humans enjoy meals in non-liquid form. A stunning, non-alien looking woman approached him from behind and gave him a fistful to the head just as he was about to inquire as to how the man was feeling. That kind of ruled out Mina's possible heritage as a full alien, as she lacked any recognizable alien features. Her eyes gave off the impression of being closed all the time, and her face was kind. Her pink hair cascaded down to her shoulders in a wavy mane. But there was something very ominous about her. The woman smiled, but it had an air of sinister anticipation. Now, Maji. What did I say about acting like an alien to scare guests? She asked. The smile turned more, if not more, murderous as he said, "Be but wife unit." Maji released a sigh. You're no fun, Nia. I have to get my kicks somehow. He then took out a pen from his pocket, looked at it, and saw that it was a stick of licorice after a pink glow. Maji appeared to smile at this, and his eyes briefly glazed over as if recalling something pleasant. Of course, dear. That's why you torment your employees with your antics and demands for candy. Prior Maji was sitting in his spacious office when a shy-looking office worker took a seat in front of him. Nonetheless, he was vice president. With his fingers interlocked, he performed a convincing impression of Gendo Ikari while seated at his desk. There was a flicker in his eyes, even though the office didn't have much light. The bashful man stammered, scared of his boss, Sir, I can't bring you the report. Maji shut his hand firmly on the desk, and why not? The man was frantic and exclaimed, because sir, I already gave it to you. You turned it into candy sir. And it was fruit roll UPS. I hate fruit roll UPS. I wanted licorice. Everyone outside the office was split between laughter and fear, not knowing how their boss, who was addicted to candy, would react if they told him no. Returning to the moment, so I can, my lovely wife. So I can, he said, rubbing his hands together and laughing ominously until she gave him another blow to the head. You'll have to forgive, Maji. He likes to mess with people. The fact he's smart enough to usually get away with it has done nothing to curb his habits. She welcomed the Midoriyas with a smile. Please, take a seat in our living room. It's down the hall to your left. Upon entering the house, Izuku and his mother noticed how ordinary it appeared. It was tasteful, not garish, furniture. Mina and her family's photos were scattered across a nearby table. Mina, her parents, and a tall boy with wild hair and a grin on his face were all displayed. There were some nice paintings on the wall of the hallway they were in right now, along with a big framed photo of Maji and his two kids laughing and striking evil poses. That one was beyond Izuku's comprehension. Before long, they were in the living room, where the boy with the pink hair in the photo and Mina were sitting and fighting about something. Look, Naji, I'm going to tell you this once. You cannot, and I emphasize that, cannot do anything stupid in front of Midoriya. Naji simply grumbled. That torch swallower was a scrub, plus, he said my cat was stupid for being blue. Also, what's up with that? Mina merely shot him an unamused glance. It was one time okay. Naji, I tolerate you. Your girlfriend, somehow, loves you. But I need you to not be an idiot. Or I'll tell Lucy you were rough for child. Naji's expression changed when he said this. You wouldn't? I would, if it helped get my brother off the self-destructive path he was on. Dude, she's queen of the nerds and cats. Even though you're lying, she would still murder me. You can't tell her that. Of course I won't. Now admit it. Naji seemed to be in pain as he repeatedly opened his mouth to speak. Naji turned to face Izuku and his mother, saying, "I'll be good, okay?" Nia asked, her aura frightening once more, "Who's the awkward-looking guy?" as she poked her head out. "Now, Naji. You wouldn't happen to be insulting our guests, would you?" No, I'll be good." Resigned to her family's mischief, Mina shook her head. Then, like a stress ball, she rushed Izuku and squeezed him. "Oh Izuku, I missed you." His mother started crying because they were so adorable, and said stress ball turned red. Rice balls, katsudon, miso soup, and side dishes of fish were the delectable dinner that the Ishidos and the Midoriyas were treated to. Izuku was having an internal conversation with his partner and friend, while Inko was speaking with Maji and Nia. "All right. Pay attention to us. Chocolate is what we want, as well as tater tots." "What?" Izuku gave a perplexed look in return. "We require chocolate and potato chips. We long for them, and Peter would satisfy our desires every time. If not, we have an organ craving. Additionally, people." Peter didn't think much of that idea, though. "Well, to start with, thanks for that. Now I want them too. Second, I'm not even sure where to find tater tots in this area. Third, you consume people. You ought to still get us some, though. We also believe that you are clinging to the incorrect things. Us. Desire. Cocoa. And tater tots. I can't just make tater tots at this moment. Izuku? You okay?" He became acutely aware of the stunned expressions on the faces around the table when Mina's worried voice interrupted his inner monologue. Izuku stutteringly said, Yeah, we're fine." Maji asked, perplexed by the pluralism, "We're." When her son used foul language, Mina's mother smacked him on the head and yelled, "Dude, you eat like a horse. Where the hell do you put it all?" His mother had seen his penchant to overindulge in food and looked worried and anxious at the same time. Mina's father just dismissed her worries, saying, "Izuku dear, are you okay? You are eating quite a bit lately." Obviously not amused by her husband's antics, Mina's mother gave him a hard headshake and said, "Clearly, the Midoriya unit requires large amounts of food to function. This will be useful information in controlling this species owl." Izuku, blushing from the attention, was teased by Mina, "Baby, seriously. I haven't said anything, but you eat a lot. You might actually get fat." "I'm a growing boy. Mom, Mina, you two don't need to worry. I just like eating enough for 2 people. Also, Mr. Ishido, do you have a chocolate?" Maji gave this an insane smile, showing off a fork before dipping it in chocolate. Nia Ishido's furious voice yelled, "Not the good silverware, Maji." Dinner had proceeded as usual. Asking awkward questions, making playful comments, and Mina's father threatening to turn him into candy if she hurt his prized alien spawn were all present. The typical items. But Mina's mother showing off her eccentricity was the highlight. She reportedly possessed a peculiarity known as Komodo that lets her spit acid. She also got a lizard tongue from it. They said goodbye after realizing how late it was. Izuku informed Mina in a low voice that she might have forgotten to meet outside Ua for the training tomorrow. She had, based on her sheepish expression. Other places. A gloomy, abnormally thin man worked over a notebook, laughed, and then spoke in a wickedly clever British accent. Soon I will unleash my evil genius upon the city, MWU ha ha ha." He then transformed into an enormous, muscular monster with a blank, stupid face. Growly. After 6 days, everything about the training went smoothly. To prove to Izuku that they were prepared, the outsiders had put in a ton of work. Thanks to Izuku's memory melding exercises, strategy tapes, and drills, they were more than ready for their big debut. They had, however, made the decision to leave practice early in order to go out and have fun, with no intention of returning to the dorms. Hitoshi, Shoto, and Mina had all packed their costumes in their bags. Mina had Izuku holding her bag, like a gentleman. Mina stopped abruptly, before her mischievous eyes brightened. Unsure of what to make of her abrupt address, the boys turned to face her and said, "Hey, Hitoshi, Shoto, why don't you guys invite Momo and Mei? If we're taking the rest of the day off as a team, why don't we bring them too? They're still involved with the team, after all." Without being able to come up with an excuse not to call their other friends, the 2 boys shrugged and looked at one another. You could see the tiniest blushes on their cheeks despite their composed manner. Our favorite vigilante group is currently watching a heroism documentary in a movie theater. Mina nestled close to Izuku. Mei was leaning against a perspiring Hitoshi, with some kind of high-tech handcuffs holding their hands together. Grasping Shoto's shoulder with her head, Momo put her hand on his chest to feel his heartbeat. True enough, even though Valentine's Day is more than 8 months away, there was definitely a sense of love in the air. For the duration of the film, this obvious exhibition of the author's ships persisted, and then they quietly left the theater. Then Momo and Mei were in Mina's seclusion, talking in hushed whispers. High fives were exchanged amongst the girls as they cast conspiratorial glances at the guys. Hitoshi and Shoto both gave Izuku a hopeful glance. Izuku said, looking perplexed, "What? Is there something on my face?" "No, but is your danger sense not going off?" "Yeah, man. The girls are looking at us like they have evil plans for us." An explosion occurred a few blocks away, interrupting Izuku as she said, "Well, now that you mention it, there is a slight tingling." Did the girls inadvertently cause that? The group turned to face Mei despite the statement, "I'm at least 60% sure Mei didn't cause that explosion." "What are you guys looking at me for? I don't blow things up, intentionally." "Okay, you heard her, kid. This time, it's not her fault. I assume that indicates a villainous attack. I believe this should serve as the team's first test." "I agree," Izuku said, looking back before turning his attention back to the team. Izuku turned to Momo and Mei and said, "You two need to find someplace safe to hide. We can handle this." Both girls nodded. "Guys, this is it. It's time for the outsiders to debut. Keep what I've taught you in mind, and you'll be fine." They gave Shoto and Hitoshi hugs before dashing out of sight. "Let's gear up in the alley over there, then head out." A skeleton stood laughing hysterically, emerging from the bank he had just robbed. "As expected, my master plan worked perfectly, and given my calculations, no heroes will respond in time to stop my abrupt exit." 4 figures arrived and put an end to his showboating and boasting. That devilish Venom was one. The others went unnoticed by him. He had no idea that he would be facing off against the outsiders, a vigilante group, first. His British accent spoke angrily, "Who the devil are you? You weren't supposed to be here." Venom pretended to be confused as he cocked his head to the side. Venom spoke in a tone that was amused, grating at the skeletal figure, "You see, we are a traveling group of magicians. We are currently looking people to showcase our talent for the mysterious. How'd you like to be the volunteer for our act? It involves making you vanish and reappear behind bars. You know, you remind me of someone. Have we met?" He said with a bored drawl that irritated the villain, and saying we're not supposed to be here. That's a pretty odd statement coming from a guy who just robbed a bank. They were in the company of the legendary Dr. Smalley, and they had no idea. "How dare you? I am the most evil scientist ever. Dr. Smalley." The group was confused by the man's British accent despite the fact that he was obviously Japanese. It was Venom who first made this observation. "Why are you talking with a British accent? We're in the dead center of Japan. Which you clearly are from. And are you really a doctor? Or are you like that TV hack from a few centuries ago in that you just claim to be one?" The egotistical skeleton was talking non-stop, obviously not caring who was listening. "Don't you know, Venom? Every evil genius villain is British. It's practically a trope. Also, I'm very smart. For you see, I am both master and henchman. Thanks to my quirk, knowledge is power. I can both scheme and execute. By sacrificing my genius-level intelligence, I can change my intelligence into immense physical strength, and vice versa. And as you know, I'm very smart. So I have a lot to work with." At this point, the antagonist's shape started to transform. "Before you die, however, I would like your names, you know, so I can laugh about it later." With a sigh of frustration, the group started talking. "We are Venom." The group's female member exclaimed, "Alien Queen," with enthusiasm. "Hivemind." The man with the bandit mask said in a bored tone. The blue and black clad figure said, "Celsius." Venom dramatically threw out his arms at this. "And we are the outsiders." Momo and Mei peered through a nearby window at the news report on the television. They were observing the outsiders, a brand new vigilante squad, as they broadcast live. They were not about to exclaim, "Hey, that's our friend group," even though they were obviously aware that it was actually their friends. Unable to handle the debut of a new vigilante team, the broadcaster was going crazy. "Folks, I don't believe what I am seeing. It seems Venom has recruited allies for his unsanctioned yet altruistic crusade. In this humble reporter's opinion, go Venom." After the anchor made her statement, Mei and Momo looked back at the impending confrontation. With the villainous Dr. Smalley rippling like he was made of water, the outsiders observed. He wrote something in a notebook and closed it, saying, "I do apologize. My other form is rather stupid. Beware the might of the unstoppable juggernaut. For I am Broly." His skeletal structure gave way to enormous muscles as he grew to a height of more than 8 feet. The man's expression changed from ominous to rather foolish, appearing naive and unthreatening. His sequence of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was finished. The dubious-looking intimidating figure uttered just a single word before taking out the notebook. Broly. With fear, Venom observed. This was the outcome in the end. Indeed, the man was enormous. However, did he appear menacing? Establishment. You'd think with how smart I am that I would remember not to use big words, he yelled, before his face returned to its vacant expression. My notebook says smash you and must steal money from banking establishment Espla. His face shrank slightly, suggesting he had reverted a little. Broly. Venom's spider sense was off the charts when he saw the massive form suddenly in front of him. Broly punched him and sent Venom flying into a building before he could react. Venom. The woman exclaimed in a worried and panicked tone. With a tool drawn from her belt, she shot Broly with it. She started to fire and slide in a circle around him. Hive Mind, you want to help out? The substance asked as it fell upon the large man, starting to burn him. Hive Mind asked boredly, assuming the fight was over when the big lug replied, "Oh right. That thing I do. Hey big guy? You like turtles?" Broly threw a punch at Hive Mind, saying, "I like turtles." Hive Mind was astonished, as he had never been unable to successfully indoctrinate someone before. What the hell? This guy is unaffected by my quirk. Broly's face twisted in half as Dr. Smalley's voice echoed from the enormous form. After saying, "You know, it's as they say. Sometimes, less is more," he returned to his foolish expression. It exclaimed with innocent delight, "Broly." Hive Mind spoke up with little surprise, saying, "Holy crap. He's too stupid to be affected by my quirk. I don't know how to take this, guys." With a sigh, Celsius's figure moved into the fray as well. There were rings of cold vapor surrounding his body as it leaked off of him. He enveloped Broly in ice by freezing the air around him, saying, "I guess I'll deal with you." Broly looked as though he was fighting the bonds and was in awe of their glitter. Celsius just looked perplexed and grew shocked when Broly broke out as if it were made of glass as the structure he had built started to tremble. "You make pretty shinies," Celsius exclaimed. Celsius was thrown into a car by Broly after he threw a piece of ice at him. Now, Venom was emerging from the debris with a sour feeling. "We swear. Is it every villain's goal to make us into a human wrecking ball? Seriously, we should break into the demolition business." He fell to the pavement. He sprinted at Broly and swung his fist into the big dummy, sending him flying, saying, "Okay, you know what? Screw it. We're gonna see just how hard we can hit this idiot." The gang stared at him, amazed. The first to speak was Alien Queen. She exclaimed, "Dude, since when are you that strong?" With excitement. "We can lift 20 tons, remember? That means we can easily lift 5 SUVs at the same time." Alien Queen appeared a little embarrassed at this point. She had no idea Venom could be so powerful. In an effort to avoid hurting those he fought, he tried not to rely solely on his strength. But this guy? He's too stupid to feel pain. That, and he seems to be made of freaking mithril. So we do not have to hold back. Leave this to us. It's a bad matchup for you guys, anyways. After giving him a nod, the others stepped aside. They were close enough to offer assistance if necessary, but still far enough away to avoid injury. Now that he was free of concerns for his group, Venom returned his focus to the villain, who was getting out of the minivan he had just collided with. "You sure, kid, that's a smart play? This guy is a mastermind as well as a henchman, even though he seems foolish at the moment. He is therefore dangerously unpredictable." Venom, nodding to his partner's advice, was about to respond when he saw Broly getting out of the car. He stiffened, but Broly gave him a foolish smile. "Notebook says I must smash you." Broly appeared in front of Venom with his fist clenched before he could respond with a clever jab or insult. Venom was just in time to raise his guard and deflect the blow as he swung his fist, but Broly started to advance, and Venom got stuck on his fist from the force of the blow. They took a few steps backwards before Venom firmly planted his feet and used Broly's momentum along with his own body to send the insane giant flying over the vigilante and rolling across the ground before stopping. Venom took a quick look around to make sure there were no bystanders in danger before turning to examine his arm. Izuku scowled beneath the mask as it began to ripple. What's going on, Venom? Oh dear. I kind of overlooked one of our skills. Simply extend your arm toward the lughead and, for a brief moment, imagine a bat. Izuku followed his partner's instructions, even more perplexed than before. His arm changed shape and became blunt before he shot in Growly's direction and slammed him, sending the stern giant flying into the storefront. What on earth, Venom? When can we do that, since? Well, since 19 always, you know. Then, why did you not say anything EARIER? We thought you were aware. We said our shapeshifting abilities were limited. An offhand remark is not a directive. I apologize. Do you really realize that you aren't able to shapeshift? Oh no. Please pardon us for being so clumsy. As if you would use it frequently anyhow. A countertop flew out of the store and straight toward Venom's face, breaking off his continued internal argument. Grasping it, he used his shape to break the momentum of Growly's throw. Growly cracked his knuckles and walked out of the now demolished store window. Venom removed the top of the counter and confronted the villain. You know, Lenny, I could get you a rabbit if you stop fighting now. Growly regarded this for a moment, as thoughtful as a guy whose brain was the size of a walnut, then shook his head. Nah. Smalley said I could have 10 bunnies if I beat you up and take the bagsies away. For a minute, Venom merely twitched. If only rabbits instead of money could inspire more minions. Growly grabbed a nearby car and hurled it towards him before he could respond with a counter-offer. Venom made a swift maneuver and launched a web to ensnare the car before it could do any real harm. He was about to concentrate on Growly when the villain took hold of his neck and started to slam him into the floor. Growly repeatedly slammed their leader into the ground, something that the other outsiders watched with concern. Mina seemed particularly frightened. But before they could get started, a recent arrival took them by surprise. Tetsu's metallic form descended upon them, and he then assumed a valiant posture. So you guys are Venom's team, right? Well, watch me help save the day. He ran to where the two were arguing before anyone could stop him. Venom wasn't feeling well. By now, he was fairly certain that he had suffered a concussion and possibly a fractured skull. A voice rose above the din of fighting, obnoxious yet manly, as he prepared to blast the giant villain off of himself with his tendrils. Venom. I'm here to help, man. Venom exclaimed as he glanced at the unfamiliar steel-bodied man, obviously unsure of who he was. What do you need me to do? Just as Venom was about to utter a snide comment about buns of steel, an idea struck her. It was not a serious request by any means. Say, new guy. You think you can make this guy laugh into submission? However, Venom reasoned that it would at least create an opening. He would not allow harm to come to the newcomer, but why should he complain if he happened to be useful? With a contemplative look on his face, Tetsu turned to face the villain, demonstrating that he was taking his idol's request seriously. Hey you big lug. Are you familiar with the hero Bofades? Growly adopted an inane expression as he attempted to answer the question with his limited mental faculties. Bofades? After taking a moment to compose himself, Tetsu exclaimed, Bofades nuts. Got M, with victory. There was quiet. There was silence throughout the audience. Nobody was quite sure how or what to say. Even though it was the silliest thing ever, the giant was trembling. Venom's perspiration had begun. Oh crap, we think we just infuriated him. But the giant villain burst out laughing before the fatalistic thoughts could finish. Massive choruses of foolish and young laughter. He started laughing so hard that he actually shrank and lost his superhuman strength, which allowed Venom to escape. When Venom saw that the villain had changed into an average-sized man who appeared to be incredibly confused, he leapt back, ready to devise a strategy. Venom, obviously not expecting a third personality from the same person today, sweat dropped. Where am I? What was I doing? Still, just to be sure, Venom knocked the guy out. Venom could not help but think how happy he was that today was over as he motioned for the police to cuff the man. Izuku was irritated right now. Firstly, Shoto and his girlfriend were currently undergoing their provisional license exams, which meant he had no one to hug. He then had to deal with Hitoshi and the shiny metal fanboy who was tailing them and pleading with them to join the team. They'd used Hitoshi's quirk to make him do a number of ridiculous things at first, but after making him declare his unwavering love for waffles in the middle of a busy intersection, they began to feel bad. If nothing else, they had the presence of mind to force him to wear a mask to conceal his dignity. All they really wanted was for him to leave, so he wouldn't get wounded. At the moment, they were enjoying some hamburgers they had purchased from a nearby fast food restaurant while lounging on a roof. Hitoshi, all outfitted and drawing in his usual way, said, "Dude, I think he might actually be serious about joining us. Circumstances of his contribution aside, he was helpful. He was eating one of the hamburgers he and Izuku had just bought, so he had his balaclava partially pulled up. About 14 had been bought by the two of them together. It's kind of inspiring, I know, but he probably doesn't remember that we just forced him to dance like a pop star on the Izuku asked, pulling back his mask to eat the burgers as well. Roof for 20 minutes, wonder how he'd take that. Hitoshi gave a shrug, but before he could say anything, Tetsu scaled the roof they were standing on. So assuming we let you join, what's your quirk? Tetsu exclaimed with excitement, I get hard. Excuse me? I mean I harden my skin into steel. Oh. That makes more sense. Tetsu bowed angrily, prostrating himself in front of them before Izuku could inquire about details. Tetsu persisted after neither vigilante responded, saying, please. You have to let me join. His sincere remarks brought back memories of how All Might used to make Izuku feel about himself. I look up to you. Even more than the Crimson Riot. You do what's right regardless of whether it's legal or not. Despite his idolization of All Might, he had admired him for many of the same reasons Tetsu had mentioned, so hearing those same reasons repeated in his own words was heartwarming. It was strange to think that he was an inspiration to anyone, even after all of his vigilante actions. Child, that's just your repressed feelings coming through. You've changed from being that defenseless youngster. You truly are a hero now. Remind yourself of that. Tetsu. Thank you, but I just do what needs to be done. I didn't want to wait to start trying to help people. Half the time my body just moves on its own. So when you rushed out to help us just because you were on the news, that impressed the hell out of me, Tetsu. Tetsu questioned, his customary arrogance gone. I mean, do you think I can be a great hero too? It was replaced by a self-doubting teenager without a particularly eye-catching quirk. As soon as Izuku noticed this, he put his hand on Tetsu's shoulder. Venom grinned, or at least the exposed portion of his face did, saying, yes, buddy. I do think you can be a hero. Now come on, and have a burger on us. The voice of All Might asked his apprentice, young Mirio, are you sure you want to do this? The other form of All Might was very similar to Mirio Tagata. Cheerful, muscular, and blonde. He was giving his mentor the thumbs up while sporting a rather silly and carefree smile. In a casual manner, Mirio said, I need to meet the guy who almost got your quirk instead of me. I've watched him in action, but I want to know what kind of person he is under the mask. His eyes became determined. Very well. Let's go. The two vigilantes along with their associate were seated in an alleyway in a circle at this point. Izuku got Hitoshi to take some action photos with his phone so that he could use it to get money from the local media. Knowing that Izuku was a little skim when it came to money, Hitoshi was happy to help. The symbiote came up with the idea since Peter had done the same thing when he made his debut. After wiping his hands, Izuku turned to face Tetsu. Izuku said in a cool, steady voice, okay, I want you to use your quirk to hit me in the face as hard as you can. Tetsu said nervously, not sure how to respond to his idol's request to be struck in the face. Dude. Are you sure? Izuku gave him a peculiar look. Tetsu, I get slammed through enough buildings and vehicles that insurance companies are considering adding a Venom clause to natural disaster insurance. Just give me your best swing. Tetsu gave a shrug, wrapped his arm in a stealthy manner, then swung to knock him back a little using his jaw. Izuku gave him a thank you look. Not bad, rookie. Not bad at all. As Izuku was about to discard the wrapper of their final hamburger, he caught sight of a face gazing at him from the wall. Hi. Izuku exclaimed, holy shit, and flipped backward, landing on the wall across from the enigmatic face in the wall. Until they noticed the happy, smiling face protruding from the wall, Hitoshi and Tetsu thought he was crazy. Your sense of danger is all-knowing. You still seem like such a spaz, why? More addressing the damn face in the wall and less Izuku berating, Izuku mentally cried out. Izuku hesitantly said, Are you a Nurikabe? In Neo, Nurikabe are F***ing annoying, and they are considered demon walls in Japanese folklore. Then the face in the wall started to look confused. Why would I be a Nurikabe? Are you an Onigumo? Demon spider, one more obnoxious boss in Neo? Izuku shot back, saying, I'm not on trial here, you jumped me. Izuku Midoriya, better known as Venom, was about to lose it when All Might's skeletal form climbed onto the roof from the fire escape. Well, that's fine. I'm Mirio Tagata. Successor to All Might and you were Izuku Midoriya. All Might had the grace to look sheepish at Izuku's sarcastic remarks, saying, "Jesus Christ, All Might. I'm glad I didn't give you my social security. Otherwise, I'm sure everyone would know it by now." Tetsu rushed up to Izuku, interrupting whatever cliches Yagi was going to say. "I promise he was the only other person, young Midor." Tetsu let out a word vomit, going into full fanboy mode. "Holy crap, I'm going to Izuku wait like the guy to think Hiroshima's friend." Izuku just kind of webbed Tetsu's mouth shut, not sure how to handle this. Focus switched to All Might. "I don't really know what you just said, so I'm gonna leave you like that until you calm down," Izuku said. "So to what do I owe the pleasure, symbol of peace and Mirio?" Unsure of what to do, Toshinori coughed awkwardly, but in answer to the question, it was Mirio who spoke with excitement. Under his mask, Izuku raised a brow and said, "I wanted to meet the guy who almost beat me out as successor to All Might." Then, Mirio emerged from the earth as nude as the day he was born, saying, "That, and despite our differing methods, we both want to help people. You just didn't let bureaucracy stop you." Before Mirio received pants from All Might, Izuku was startled by the stranger's exposure. Shrugging off his nudity, Mirio was a big man. He stood at least 6 feet tall and was very muscular. His hair was styled in a pompadour, and his eyes had a friendly yet peculiar appearance. Izuku was not sure how to address Mirio, so he said, Thanks. I think." All Might appeared to be nothing but him. "Odd question. You ever play Fallout?" No." "Why?" Izuku turned to Shinso and said, "No reason. Hive mind, take our friend somewhere else. I need to speak to them alone." After giving Tetsu permission to go down the fire escape to have some privacy, Hitoshi nodded. Izuku stood listening for the other side to speak while he watched Mirio and All Might whisper to one another. They could talk freely now that Tetsu and Hitoshi were no longer with them. Though there was unmistakably a trace of bitterness in his voice, Izuku spoke in a casual manner. "All right, All Might. I thought I made it clear I didn't really want to see you around last time we met. So I'm assuming you have a good reason beyond wanting to remind me of every negative interaction we've had." The casual remark that you were almost All Might's successor still left him unsure of how to react. Shading his head sheepishly, Toshinori sighed and considered what he should say. "Mirio wanted to meet you. I didn't really want to come, but he was insistent that I did as a mediator. He didn't believe me when I said you didn't exactly like me." Rejecting his mentor's explanation, Mirio shot back, "Hey, I just thought it'd be easier if I had a familiar face to introduce us." Izuku became extremely irritated at this point. "Look, Tintin, I don't know what he told you, but he and I are not friends. He hurt me in a big way, so kindly tell me what you want so I can leave." He was showing off that a little less subtly thanks to the suit, and he had clearly not fully resolved all of his feelings toward All Might. Mirio appeared discouraged by that, but he persisted. "I wanted to suggest an alliance. It'll help you get legitimacy as a hero sooner, and allow us to team up. In case you didn't notice, I already have a team, and that's arrogant of you to assume that I want or need your help. What's important is that I help people. Whether society accepts or rejects, that isn't my problem. Don't misunderstand. I have nothing against you. I'm just a little irritated right now." Izuku briefly glanced at All Might before turning his gaze back on Mirio. "I'm not opposed to helping you out if the situation demands, but neither is that something I just want to openly commit to." Mirio nodded in the end, though he appeared sad. "That's fine, I guess, for now." Izuku turned to All Might after giving a shrug. "So the UA students get back tomorrow, right?" Toshinori gave a confirmation nod. He'd been receiving fragmented information regarding the proceedings at the provisional license examinations. Faculty began to worry about the students Izuku had trained being flight risks because they were outperforming the others by a significant margin. Izuku remained silent while his Venom outfit changed into its full form. "That's correct. In case you're curious, it seems every student you trained is on course to pass. But I'm sure you assumed as much." After giving All Might a subtle jab, Venom shot up into the sky and used his earpiece to dial Hivemind. "As fun as this is, I don't really feel like being around you guys any longer. You got what you wanted, so now I'm going to go be a hero. Enjoy the retirement, All Might." Venom had moved several city blocks and was watching the normal flow of hustle and bustle of city life as the phone rang. Hivemind answered on the 6th ring. Hitoshi uttered his typical bored drawl, "Yo, Izuku," as a few sirens began to sound in the background. "Where are you? And what the hell is that racket in the background?" "Oh, that? Some bald hero fought a crab monster. Beat the thing in one punch, and now he's screaming to himself and smacking the ground. It's pretty weird." Unsure of how to respond, Izuku continued with his point despite the question. I see. How's Tetsu? Hitoshi sighed but continued to respond. He's got a good heart, and he's not stupid. Just super inexperienced. I'd say you'd need to give him a training camp experience before letting him tag along. He did, however, shield a couple from harm when that pro was fighting the creature. He jumped without prodding, shielding them with his quirk from some collateral debris chunks that were flying around. I say we keep him around. Agreed. We'll talk more tomorrow. I'm tired and I'm about to crash on my feet. We'll meet up at UA to greet the others tomorrow morning, yeah? Sounds good to me. Later, Izuku. Other places. While watching the news, Tamura Shigaraki was drinking from a can of soda. Every time Venom was brought up, his fingers twitched, and the more the vigilante was covered by the news, the more agitated he became. He started to mumble something incoherently, but Kurogiri abruptly approached him and stopped him. The Black Mist villain said coolly, Master Tamura, we have a problem. The containment unit has failed. Your experimental, raid boss, is about to get out. Then, he quickly changed the channel to a security camera feed with the nearby remote. The feed was erratic and jerky. Still, there was a big silhouette that stood out in the smoke. It was enormously large, roughly 7 feet tall, and muscular. Its hair looked spiky through the smoke, and its left arm was writhing, as if it had its own will. A projection resembling a beak protruded from the creature's face, but its face was hidden. No, Kurogiri. Don't you see? This is perfect. Get whoever is around ready. We're about to initiate our raid. The boss is now in place, right? So let's go, Venom. It's your turn. Roll for initiative. With explosions echoing off its right hand, the figure raised a hand to the camera as they turned to face the live feed. Though the video feed stopped, the audio continued to play for a while, picking up just one word. Kill. A dull tug at his spider sense woke Izuku. With a sigh, he glanced at his watch, which showed that it was 8:30 in the morning. He could arrive at Mina and the others' location in 5 minutes, and he didn't have to meet with them for another hour. He became aware that the tug had persisted even as the wave of sleepiness cleared. There was something sinister in the air, though he wasn't sure why. It loomed like a cloud of doom, but he was powerless to do anything about it in the absence of the telltale symptoms of an ongoing crisis. With a shrug, he got out of bed to get ready for his UA friends' get-together and perhaps to prepare breakfast. When he mentally greeted his partner, the non-corporeal entity responded with something akin to a, "I'm not ready to function yet." Izuku saw his mother watching the news and sipping coffee in their living room. Izuku said, grabbing his mother's attention, "Morning, Mom." She gave him a smile, put down her coffee cup, and then answered. Izuku. Good morning. What's got you up so early? You usually like to sleep in on your days off. Izuku laughed. Mina gets back from her licensure trip today. I wanted to greet her when she arrived back at her dorms. With her signature tears welling up in her eyes, Inko cried out, "Oh Izuku. My baby boy is a romantic gentleman. I'm so proud." Izuku did nothing more than give his mother a quick pat on the shoulder. Just as he was about to respond, he noticed something on the news. Reaching for the remote, he turned off the TV. The screen changed from an overlay of the anchor and field reporters to an overhead view of a completely destroyed warehouse. The warehouse was completely destroyed. While it was on the outskirts of Mustafa, authorities are advising caution as it could be the work of a villain. We will update this story as details come in. Although it wasn't in a densely populated area, there was a great deal of devastation. There was rubble everywhere, the walls that remained standing stained red from burn marks. Throughout the ruins, there were tiny indentions and some black charred rocks. Although no bodies had yet turned up, they might have been concealed beneath the debris mounds. Izuku's observations suggest that it might have been caused by a gas line burst and caught fire. The little claw marks scattered throughout the debris are the only thing that contradicts that theory. Of course, it might all be nothing, but the scene gave him even more unease. He was tempted to try and look into it, but he didn't want to break the awkward peace he was currently enjoying with law enforcement and professionals. He looked at his watch and shook his head. Before he had to leave, he still had about 10 minutes left. His mother's voice startled him out of his reverie. Izuku. He noticed the worried expression on her face as he looked at her. He calmly answered, "Yes, Mom. What's wrong?" Not wanting to wake her up or bring her down any more this early in the morning. "I know things are going well in school for you, as you're currently ranked second in your class. I know things are going well for you with Mina as well, but we never talked about you wanting to be a hero again after you graduated. I wanted to bring it up sooner, but you're always so busy. Are you okay, honey?" I know that was your dream, and I don't want you to be disappointed. It surprised Izuku. Had he truly never communicated with his mother since gaining his abilities? That would explain why, whenever Mina paid her a visit, she always seemed so uncomfortable when the subject of futures came up. When he realized he had not responded to her, he gave her a comforting smile. He hugged her and shrugged into his green hoodie before saying, "Mom, don't worry. I know what I want to do, and believe it or not, being a pro hero doesn't totally have the same appeal to me that it did before. I'm happy, though. I promise. Love you, Mom. I'll try to be home early tonight, so we can watch movies or something, okay?" Upon hearing her son's response, Inko appeared considerably more relieved, nodding and then grinning. "Sounds good, Izuku. Be safe, okay? You know me, Mom. I'm always careful." Somewhere else. A hefty figure staggered through the forest, moving seemingly aimlessly and without purpose. On its right arm, explosions danced, while its left arm wriggled wildly all by itself. With a desire to fulfill its purpose, the one it was given in the taking, it lumbered towards the sounds of the city. To murder and demolish. For reasons it could not recall, these words also made it feel uneasy at the same time. The animal gave a shake of its head and turned to face the two hikers who had come across its path. It observed them, waiting for an opportunity to strike and try to take him out. They turned to flee as they stood trembling in terror. At the sign of weakness, the creature clicked its beak, lifted a hand, and spoke one of the few words it could speak. "Die." After explosions tore through the clearing, a spooky silence took their place. The creature kept moving forward and turned to face Musatafa town. Izuku was jumping from roof to roof toward Ua while wearing his half-suit in an attempt to be the first there. Call him archaic, but at the end of a meeting, the leader ought to be the last person out. Setting a good example and all that. He saw a number of heroes on duty in the streets, but from his experience as a vigilante, he knew that many heroes just don't think to look up while they're on patrol. Strange, but he wasn't going to whine about something that had benefited him. The people seemed to be going about their days normally, unaffected by the lingering sense of dread in the air, save for him. Not even screams or sirens. Izuku gave a headshake. This was no time to linger over thoughts. He had to go welcome his teammates and, above all, his amazing girlfriend, who had passed her license exam. But ought he to bring her a gift as a token of appreciation? Indeed. Izuku was startled by his partner's abrupt input and narrowly avoided hitting his face on a wall. He only managed to avoid looking very pathetic by using his reflexes and movement experience. Easy, young one. Incredibly fluid, and yes, you should get her a gift, to follow my excellent advice. Peter gave Felicia a lot of that. On the other hand, I was usually deeply scarred by her reactions. She was strange. It caused Izuku to pause. Freaky? His poor, innocent mind asked his partner in silence, oblivious to the implications of his symbiote's words. You wish to remain ignorant. However, Mina will be happy, I promise. Little, impromptu acts of kindness that convey your concern are frequently well received. He who coached a guy even more awkward than you is the person to take advice from. Izuku started to perspire. His partner was never one to wear modesty well. He shook his head and turned to visit a vintage video store. Hopefully, they would have merchandise from Alien. Mina Ashido felt worn out. Extremely exhausted, she got off the bus with a slug. She looked at Todoroki, who didn't appear any more worn out than he had before they had left for the exams, with fatigued eyes. Momo was clutching Shoto's hand rather tightly and appeared immaculate as usual. It irritated Mina a little that they seemed unaffected, given the severity of Izuku's torture. Training. Mina found the practical portion of the exam to be easy, but she and the other outsiders encountered very little difficulty with the other applicants. It was actually only a few Shiketsu high school students who caused them problems. Even though Mina never learned their names, she, Shoto, and Momo's combined strength proved too much for them to overcome. No, Mina Ashido's fatigue stemmed from one straightforward cause, the written test. She detested that stupid paper and it gave her headaches. Despite passing with a perfect score on the practical, she was still exhausted from taking the stupid test. She was only aware that Izuku owed her some kisses and cuddles. Her plans for her little cinnamon roll made her laugh darkly. Izuku, who was sitting on a nearby rooftop, experienced an unexplainable, dark, and exciting chill up his spine. Mina looked around for Hitoshi and Izuku, but neither of them appeared to be there right away. She let out a disappointed sigh. Izuku's mocking voice echoed behind her, making her screech and leap several feet into the air, asking, "Who are you looking for?" The other students gave this some worried looks. but they quickly moved on to their own conversations after realizing there was no immediate threat. He gave her a gentle smile as she pivoted to glare at him. But when she gave him a swat on the head, the smile kind of vanished. After a moment of hesitation, Mina realized to whom she was speaking. "Izuku? You meanie? You scared me." "Izuku," was a much less irate cry that was broken up by Mina throwing herself at her boyfriend, who has a curly hairstyle. He chuckled and gave the hug back. He held up a small stuffed alien plushie that Mina had missed, saying, "I wanted to mess with you a bit. I couldn't help it. Plus, I had to make a small detour. Congratulations on passing Mina." Mina remained silent for a brief moment before forcing her lips to meet his, trying her hardest to suffocate him. Izuku gave off a frantic wave of his arms before she withdrew, restoring his oxygen supply. Mina saw the ridiculous smile on his face. He turned beet red in the face as she beamingly said, "Thank you, Tiger. I love him." Izuku blushed as he responded, "Oh, of course, Mina. I know how much you like enamorphs, so I tried to find one for you. I also was going to take you to a dinner and a movie as part of the congratulations as well. I got us reservations at a cool restaurant that I crashed into." Mina looked amused at this. The owner wouldn't happen to owe Venom a favor, would they? Upon Izuku's quietness, she felt sympathy for him and chuckled. "Relax, Izuku. I'm just kidding. If the food is great, then that's all that matters to me." At this moment, Hitoshi and Shoto arrived to reunite them with their surroundings. With his customary bored drawl, Hitoshi inquired, "So now that the gang is back together, what's the plan?" Shoto expressed his curiosity by simply nodding his head. Just as Izuku was about to respond, a massive explosion occurred in the distance, approximately near the edge of Mustafa. For those who were closer to the blast, the shockwave was so large that it caused them to stumble, which was not exactly encouraging. Izuku stood up and turned to face his team. "The plan is to investigate and, if necessary, put an end to it. Somewhere else." Mirio Tagata climbed out of the rubble the creature had blasted him into. He glanced around himself, noting that what had previously been a city block was now a crater. He had stumbled onto the creature during his patrol for his practical hours he needed for graduation. He recognized it as a Nomu from the League of Villains, but this one was different than the others he'd read about. It was roughly 6.5 feet tall and possessed a muscular frame. Its eyes were red and crazed, and its face had a beak over the mouth, which was lined with razor-sharp teeth. Spiky blonde hair was visible on top of its head, and explosions rippled on its right arm. Speaking of the creature's arms, the right arm was very different from the left. The right looked like it was made of tough, yet rubbery sinew, and was a mixture of maroon and black in color. Running along the back of that arm appeared to be a tube that had a hole above the back of its wrist. The left arm was just a writing mass of what looked like a shadow. It was formed into a claw-like appendage currently, but there were 2 yellow eyes in between the knuckles surround the middle claw, as well as a mouth in the palm of the hand. The creature's body was milky white, with black lines running down the chest and sides. It was every bit as muscular as the arm was, and also seemed to be made of rubbery flesh. It wore green shorts which were currently ripped, probably due to how massive the beast was. Its legs were no different, and were proportional to the rest of its body. All in all, it was a monster, and Mirio wasn't sure that even with his progress into 50% of One for All would be enough to stop it. But he also knew that there was only 1 or 2 other heroes he felt could fight this thing to the degree he could. The other pros weren't equipped to handle a creature like this. Mirio shook his head. He couldn't think in such fatalistic terms. He was Lemillion, successor to All Might. He would stop this beast, and prove he was worthy. He was about to make his move when psychotic laughter rang out through the now quiet area. "Oh my god, Kurogiri. This is more lethal than I had anticipated." Standing on the roof above the scene in his Venom suit, Izuku studied and interpreted the scene below him. A creature of some kind. Likely a Nomu. That Mirio guy, and a group of people who were most likely villains. At the head of the villains was a man with shaggy light blue hair, who had a lot of glove-like things on his body. If his posture and insane laughter were any indication, this man was the leader of the villains. Around the crater, there were bystanders, and a news helicopter circled overhead. This was it. After this, they would either be true heroes, or outlaws. Venom turned his head enough to look back at his team, who nodded. Shoto took off his helmet, and they all moved to the ledge. They had to make an entrance because everyone enjoys shock and awe. Lemillion was beginning to get nervous. He was sure he could handle the group of villains and the creature individually, but together? The odds weren't so great. But before he could act, A massive fireball shot through the sky, and several figures landed between him and the villains. As the dust settled, the slender figure of Venom stood up and turned to face the news helicopter and bystanders. In his dark, distorted voice, one sentence rang out for everyone to hear. "Citizens, do not be afraid, considering that we are present." Cheers erupted from the crowd as Venom raised an arm and gave a thumbs up to those in his immediate vicinity. He then turned to face the League. "I don't know who you are, but based on your demeanor, it seems like you're the crazy-ass leader." Venom felt the floor beneath him move at that moment, and then the strong figure of Mirio stood beside him, his arms crossed and a brave smile on his face. "We will give you one chance to end this amicably, villain." "Yes, villain, how could you withstand Venom's and Lemillion's strength, not to mention the outsiders?" The TV displayed a frantic news anchor, who was in the process of losing his mind over the entrance of Venom and the outsiders. Despite the optimism of the reporter, All Might watched the TV with worry. This was it. He couldn't save the day anymore. This time, he was the powerless observer. He could only hope that Mirio's prodigal talent with One for All combined with his own quirk would be enough. He knew that Venom would be a help, but he didn't think that the kid would be much use to Mirio. He knew Venom was tough, and was better than a lot of pros out there. But this was all for One's final move. The contingency he'd planned in the event he was removed from the chessboard. A super Nomu, with abilities they were not totally aware of. Throw in the entirety of the remaining League of Villains members, and this was a fight on par with his own with All for One. Toshinori bit his lip with worry. The other big-name pros were busy handling other supervillains in the city. The League's movement brought both big and small-time independent villains out of the woodwork, so it was an all-hands-on-deck situation. So for now, Venom and Lemillion no. Izuku and Mirio were on their own. The villain stared at them in silence before his shoulders started to tremble and his soft chuckles intensified into full-blown fits of deranged laughter. "I don't think you really understand the circumstances. This is something that I can control just as much as you can. It sort of knows that I'm not someone to kill. That's all there is to it. Apart from that, that massive monstrosity is aiming for everything. It's amazing, isn't it?" The villain exuded a maniacal smile and spread his arms in that grandiose manner that villains usually do. He also let out wild laughs. This caused Lemillion and Venom to exchange a look and scowl. This was one obviously insane man with a voracious appetite for carnage, which made him far more dangerous and unpredictable than your average villain, and not to mention that neither of them knew what the hell his peculiarity was. All in all, this was not the best of situations. Venom snapped out of his tactical analysis when he heard Lemillion say, "Hey, Venom. I say we rush the guy, take him out, and let the rest of your team handle to small timers. They're capable of handling that, right?" "Yes, while they don't have the experience we have fighting actual villains, but they're more than capable of handling the average villain," Venom calmly said, seeing the bulking beast filling him with a sense of familiarity and dread. "We will relay the plan to our team," Venom said, racking his brains over the suggestion. "Could you stop them if they try to move until we're done?" Venom tapped his earpiece beneath his mask as Lemillion nodded and then moved to a slightly more reactive stance. "Guys, Lemillion and I will be taking care of Handjob and Monstro over there. The generic villain brigade is going to fall on you guys. Team, do you think you can handle it?" If the big baddies were even half as powerful as he anticipated, he wouldn't be able to pull them out of the fire if they got in over their heads. His tone was lighthearted but worried nonetheless. Hivemind gave a grunt, Alien Queen blew a raspberry at him, and Celsius just raised a skeptical eyebrow, as if he'd just asked the world's silliest question. Hivemind said dryly, "I mean, if we aren't, then I guess you're just a shitty teacher." Celsius snorted with amusement, and Alien Queen laughed. Venom felt his eye twitch beneath his mask, but he realized the lightheartedness eased the tension. It was a tactic he'd used himself when he'd first come out, and it had just stuck with him. "Okay, outsiders, get going." Lemillion and Venom raced the leader and the monster as the outsider charged towards the villains. The outsiders and the League of Villains were only getting started in their battle. To continue. "I'm kidding." With Celsius and Alien Queen by his side, Hivemind stood and boredly gazed at the villains. "So, just out of curiosity, how many of you actually enjoy working for Handjob?" At this point, roughly 1/3 of the villains complained. Hivemind smiled like a child in a candy store, saying, "All right, go beat the shit out of the rest." With that, the horde of villains was divided into 3 groups. The outsiders to be defeated, the brainwashed, and conditioned, hey, and the ones fighting the brainwashed. Altogether, this left about 20 villains to deal with among the three groups. Celsius nodded to himself, plan in mind, and looked at the other 20 with analytical eyes, his mind working quickly. I say we fight in tandem, he said. Hivemind nodded, knowing full well that he won't be able to fight too much. That means you handle 2 of them, Hive, while Queen and I can handle the remaining 18 villains. Alien Queen pouted, obviously wanting to brag to the world about how much she'd grown. Both nodded in agreement, and then they turned on their helmet HUDs. Celsius tapped a few buttons on the side of his helmet, which tapped them into the broadcast frequency the nearby news chopper was using, and he started speaking to both the country and the villains. Japanese citizens and the villains in front of us, pay attention. I'm Celsius, and I belong to the Outsiders, a group of heroic people. But since I'm the son of Endeavor, the world's greatest hero, you might know me better. Given that a third of you are currently fighting another third of us and under our control, I would therefore advise you to give up. We are here to help because we are heroes. Even though we lack a license, we'll fight valiantly to protect you. Together with Principal Nezu of Ua and the Mayor of Mustafa, the Chief of Police stood and watched the broadcast. We cannot ignore this any longer, he sighed as he turned to face his fellow spectators. We have to either officially detain Venom and his associate Issa. He stopped talking as he recognized the face of a vigilante discussing something on television. My name is Celsius, and I belong to the Outsiders, a group of heroic people, but since I'm the son of Endeavor, the world's greatest hero, you might know me better. This information caused all 3 men, sentient beings, to leap to their feet. The school festival winner and son of the new #1 hero was a vigilante? This completely derailed any thoughts of arrest. If they moved to arrest people who stepped up in times of crisis, there would be riots, especially since one of them was the child of a prolific hero like Endeavor, and the other was a man of the people like Venom was. Not to mention that they are currently defending themselves against one of the biggest organized villain attacks in recent memory. No, this took the option of arresting them, leaving only one that didn't cause people to lose faith in the justice of those in positions of authority. Nezu was the next to speak, and the chief glanced at both the mayor and Nezu, seeing that they had reached the same conclusion. So here is what we must do. An explosion blasted Lemillion backwards, and Venom leapt to the side and clung to a heap of rubble. Hansi appeared less interested in a fight he saw as pointless, preferring to concentrate on the struggle between the Outsiders and his forces, laughing mockingly as he watched them start fighting among themselves. You guys have some really interesting people, I said. I regret not being able to obtain them prior to you. Come on, crazy and tall pale. You don't really think they would associate with your eerie appearance, do you? Dio called, really. He wants to wear his loud Sunday best again. You speak a lot. That doesn't sit well with me. At this, the man rushed Venom and grabbed the debris that Venom was clinging to. So I'm going to shut you up now. How on earth is he doing this? As though responding to his inquiry, the blue-haired scoundrel committed the fatal error of any convincing villain, elaborating on his abilities. Wow, that's impressive. I break everything down to the cellular level with all 5 of my fingers. This brings up an obvious question. Did you discover this the first time you attempted to strangle the chicken? That was quite the rude surprise, we think. This prompted another enraged swipe and an attempt to seize Venom's throat, which was easily evaded. Stay still, you awful bother. Tamura began to lose his temper at the taunts and growled in rage. I guess that's preferable to the constant joke of having to clarify that arachnids are not insects when they are called insects. That would be irksome. Venom punched Tamura and then gave him a back flip kick to the blue-haired teen's chin, sending him flying backwards and skidding across the dirt. Tamura, obviously furious by now, growled and glared at the Nomu before yelling, Nomu, inhibitors of release. Destroy this city with a bomb. The massive Nomu, which had been battling Lemillion to the death, froze for a split second before yelling, kill. Its left arm exploding violently, causing massive explosions to erupt all around it, destroying much of the surrounding area. The blast knocked everyone back and eliminated many of the infighting villains who were too close to escape. The shockwaves even rocked the news helicopter that was circling overhead. Dust settled in and around the crater, and Lemillion emerged unscathed from the ground in front of the monster, breathing heavily and darting around it with wild, crazed eyes. The creature was breathing heavily, its red eyes wild and crazed, darting around the crater. The fights with the fodder villains had mostly subsided, with many of them either killed or too injured by the blast or rendered incapacitated by the Outsiders, who had already dispatched quite a few before they'd been interrupted by the Nomu going nuclear. They shook their heads, before tying up the villains and turning their attention to the crater, not knowing what to do. Emerging from the debris, Venom led a bloodstained Tamura to safety. Whoa, you didn't really give that much thought, did you? Or perhaps you were that insane? Sincere query. Did you learn any tricks from Heath Ledger's Joker, the villain? He definitely had some cracked ribs, and Mr. Handy there had grabbed his left arm in the confusion and seared through his suit down to his muscle tissue. His symbiote had regenerated, but he'd probably need to see a doctor after this, which prompted a groan. Hospitals were expensive, so he'd have to get a lot more pictures of himself to sell to the paper to cover those bills. Because if that's the case, you might want to pick a more successful villain to idolize. Venom threw the injured villain to his team after glancing back at Tamura, who had only chosen to spit at him rather than respond to his jabs verbally. Geez, you save a guy's life and his response is attempted maiming as well as spit on you, Venom said. What has happened to this world? Venom shook his head and turned to face Hivemind, saying, work with him. You're the most qualified to handle him because he's injured. Lemillion will require my assistance. This creature seemed to be going easy before, in my opinion. After expressing his thoughts, Venom dove back into the crater to engage in the greatest battle of his life. All of them, including Hivemind, just stared at Tamura, who did the same. So, what do you do for fun besides orchestrate cosplay conventions? Hivemind asked, shrugging. Tamura shook with rage at being made fun of. How dare you insult? He began, then broke off in mid-sentence to adopt a robotic posture. All right, let me start by asking how your quirk functions. We can't let you use it to avoid us, can we? I disintegrate anything I touch with all 5 of my fingertips. Oh, that's a simple solution, I see. He looked at Celsius, then took off his gloves and gave the half and half hero the gloves. Now, burn the pinky finger off of these, and then return them to me. Acknowledging the situation, Celsius obeyed with haste. Retrieving the gloves from his colleague, Hivemind approached Tamura again and gave him the gloves, some medical tape, finger splints, and handcuffs. All right, start by putting on these gloves. Then, use the splints to keep your pinkies straight. Put the handcuffs on behind your back when you're finished. Snugly. Well done, Hypnotoad, Alien Queen gave a happy cheer. Hivemind said, irritated, no problem, and never call me that again. After quickly and easily neutralizing the leader, they returned their focus to the terrifying battle that was still to come. As Venom touched down next to Lemillion, he didn't look up at his contemporary. Instead, he maintained a fixed gaze on the creature in front of him, knowing that a moment's distraction would only invite trouble. I'm going to assume that you've reached the same decision that I did. Venom nodded in response. Any ideas as to what they might be? This thing has 2 main quirks for offense, and a litany of others to amplify and mitigate negative effects of the others. So far, it appears to be combustion and shadow manipulation, said Venom. Consider that you could battle him for a few minutes while I assess him. I realize it's risky, but so is attempting to learn something new quickly. I swear, I'll have all the information we need in 2 minutes. Lemillion grimaced but nodded. It was more a question of how much collateral damage that engagement would cause than whether they could hold out against the creature for that long. Lemillion rushed the creature, charging it with energy and restraining it with a punch with his right arm before yelling, Blinder Touch Eyeball Crush. The attack sounded pretty brutal, so Venom was very surprised when the punch went straight through the creature's head. But then he saw Lemillion slam his left fist into the creature's stomach, sending it hurtling like it had just been punched by all might. It crashed into the crater's far wall, sinking into it slightly, but emerged from the impact hole rather quickly, looking relatively undamaged, though Venom noticed a strange shiver running through the creature's body from its abdomen as it did. He asked his symbiote, any idea what that was? It seems like it was shock absorption. But that seems too obvious. He needed all the assistance he could get in this battle. As far as I'm aware of, look at its arms and chest. It appears to have some shock absorption capacity. They have changed slightly since the massive explosion. Venom examined the creature's body up close using the zoom feature on his lens. It turned out that the skin had become more calloused and darker than it had been previously, especially in the areas surrounding the blast generation zones. Quick regeneration. Izuku stopped cold. No, or else the skin would be more or less the same, without the addition of calluses. A terrifying notion crossed his mind, one he hoped was untrue. He shook his head, then focused on the creature's hands, focusing on the palm of its hands. He zoomed in and noticed that the right hand, which was the source of the larger explosions, had the most calloused palm. I hope I'm wrong, he said. Venom blurted out 2 words before he could stop himself. Kachan? Bakugo? Mitsuki Bakugo's year had not been good. Even in her best moments, she was erratic, and the loss of her son had made her even more so, to the point where her marriage was collapsing around her. She had turned on the news when she learned that the people who had abducted her son, the so-called League of Villains, were staging a spectacular comeback. She had hurried home to watch the TV show in the hopes of finding some clue as to her son's future, that he was now either dead or a villain or simply anything that would enable her to begin the process of moving on. Upon hearing Venom's words on the broadcast, the usually fiery woman experienced two realizations that brought her to tears. The first word was damning to her, though she doubted it would mean much to most people. The initial deduction? The top vigilante in the nation was her son's childhood friend. But her tears had nothing to do with that. No, the reason she was crying was that her son had turned into a monster. The crater echoed with those words. The creature paused, cocking its head to the side as it prepared to launch itself at Lemillion. Venom's words appeared to have confused it, to the point where it had stopped growling, the explosions had stopped, and the shadowy left arm's writhing appeared to have dulled. Kill is a straightforward answer that is usually menacing, but in this instance, it seemed perplexed by something. Similar to the tiniest vestige of a memory that piques your interest before vanishing into the misty forest of forgetfulness. Venom's suspicions were confirmed when its hostility ended, and that, too, the most terrifying aspect of the whole experience was that Venom's tunnel vision was broken by Lemillion's question, "Do you know the person that was the basis for this Nomu?" Which brought him back to the present. "This is not the best time, but I know you have experience with fighting these things. You probably realize there is not a way to bring back anyone who has turned into one of these things." "Shut up. Don't you think I know that?" Alien Queen's voice was shaking as she said, That thing is Bakugo." The idea that a human could be so deformed into a monster was horrifying. I'd always figured he'd just show up one day, battered and bruised, at the gates of the school. Just to say, I escaped. No thanks to you losers. Does that mean that Tokiyami was made into one of those things too? Celsius continued to study the creature, focusing on its left arm. He gave a headshake. No, I don't think so. Look at its left arm. That thing is clearly Dark Shadow. This tells us three important things. 1. Tokiyami is most likely dead. 2. They used his quirk to make Bakugo a new arm before they made him into this creature. Lastly, it means its arm has the same weaknesses as Tokiyami's quirk did, namely, bright lights. Taking Celsius at his word, Hivemind nodded at this. Although he didn't know the two missing students, he was aware that Venom would require this information. He quickly typed up a message informing Venom of the weaknesses in his left arm that would appear on Venom's suit lenses. Alright, so Celsius, at some point, you need make the biggest and brightest fire you possible can. It's break time, kid. That thing is prepared for another assault. Later, you can grieve for your friend. You need to stop doing that right now. Venom, that thing was my friend, and there's no turning back now. You are unsure about that. Mirio does, but not me. As All Might's successor, he has access to files related to All for One in his creations. No, we don't. Should he declare Bakugo unsalvageable? Then there's no saving him. Venom gave a headshake. It was not the moment to quarrel with every aspect of himself. This was a creature he had to stop. He noticed a text message from Hivemind. Left arm has a quirk related to shadow manipulation. It is weaker in bright light and stronger in dark. I have a plan in place to put an end to that oddity. I just need time. He turned to face Lemillion, who had been punching out and was shaking his fist. We're pretty sure we have figured out what we need to know to stop this creature. The left arm is a shadow manipulation quirk, stronger in darkness and weaker in bright light. Lemillion scowled slightly. There was a student with a quirk like that in the freshman year, but he went missing. Be that as it may, that's not important right now. We have to stop this thing before it hurts anyone else. Lemillion nodded while he sighed. All right, while it wasn't a 2-minute fight like I expected, we did get some information. What have you got? Adaptive resistance combined with shock absorption. The absorption was the reason it shook after the punch. We're sure it has adaptive resistance because the skin on the body where explosions occur is calloused up, to prevent self-damage. The explosions are bigger than what Bakugo could generate on his own, so we think they added a passive ability to control oxygen levels in the vicinity of his body. Then you have the shape-shifting shadow control of the left arm that seems autonomous. Fucking hell. You said adaptive resistance? That's arguably the most problematic. Meaning the longer we drag this out, the less likely we are to win. We know. We must fight together. What are your skills, Lemillion? Lemillion nodded while he sighed. You know, All Might basically made me his successor. That basically means he gave me his quirk in conjunction with my own. My quirk was originally just permeation, which I had mastered to the point of being able to become intangible at will. Now I can use the abilities of All Might along with my own. It's a rather symbiotic partnership. Venom side as symbiotic was mentioned. I'm not at All Might's level. I can't go into specifics, but basically, I'm only able to use 60% of his quirk right now. He says I have a rather prodigious grasp for it, but that's not the point. Okay. Intangible and All Might power. Okay, I can work with that. I'm sure you know enough about me to know I'm essentially the second coming of Spider-Man. So you know what I can do. So I'm thinking I do hit and runs, while you catch him with devastating blows. Sound good? Lemillion nodded. Alright, let's go. They jumped to their feet. Yes, Venom did. Lemillion simply vanished beneath the earth. Venom swung around Bakunomu, using the different pipes that protruded from the crater floor to propel himself forward quickly. He shot webbing at the creature's body as he swung around, immobilizing it. That was challenging because of the Shadow Arm's malleability, which allowed it to easily get around the webbing. For a sufficient amount of time, the remaining 75% of its body remained motionless, allowing Lemillion to emerge from the earth beneath it. He yelled, "Phantom! Menace!" as he slammed a huge fist into Bakunoemu's face and sent it flying. But Venom was never one to sit back and enjoy himself, so he jumped over Lemillion. Venom yelled, "Lemillion! Up!" which made Lemillion clench his fists and charge them before squeezing them together. After that, Venom planted his foot on the joined hands and leapt in time to see Lemillion launch his fists into the air, sending Venom hurtling in Bakunoemu's direction. Alright, this is so overused, big guy, but you know what they say. Venom fired as much webbing as he could, then started swinging Bakunomu back and forth in the air before flinging him back to Lemillion, who was spinning with his arm drawn back and energy crackling around his forearm. Back to you, Lemillion. Phase shift. Lariat. Lemillion's form entered the creature and passed through it before striking Bakunomu in the neck with his right forearm. He then used the momentum to propel the creature's body into the ground. It gave a brief twitch before coming to a complete stop. Unintentionally, Venom ended up on the ground in front of a crowd. Lemillion quickly joined him after checking the creature and discovering no pulse as they ran for him. Unfortunate, yet essential, Lemillion pondered in his mind. He looked over at Venom, who was bending over to speak with a child. Lemillion and Venom laughed, but said nothing. "Whoa, Mr. Venom, you and that blonde guy made such a cool team," Venom exclaimed. Venom and Lemillion exchanged a quick glance at this. Do you think I can be a hero someday too? My mom worries because my quirk isn't anything super special. Each of them placed a hand on the child's shoulder as they knelt to look him in the eyes. The child nodded quickly. "You may find this difficult to believe, kid, but can you keep a secret for us?" The child's eyes widened as Venom laughed once more before leaning in conspiratorially and whispering, "We are actually quirkless. Or we were." Lemillion also gave a nod. "My mother also thought my quirk wasn't suited to hero work. But I told myself that I would surpass All Might, and save 1 million people. To do that, I mastered my quirk to the point I could use it offensively." Another look that both heroes share. Venom and Lemillion exclaimed together, "Young man, you too can be a hero," as the boy's eyes filled with tears. It takes a lot of hard work and a firm sense of justice. And you can't lose faith in yourself when you make mistakes. If you can do this, then you will be a true hero like us one day. The child was sobbing uncontrollably as he hugged their legs. Venom opened his mouth to say something, but as soon as he heard a scream from the crowd, his spider sense went crazy and his blood froze. "Look out!" After turning around in time, Venom saw Bakunomu clutching its right arm and the tube running along it in its mouth. It cried out, "Kill me," and let loose a massive explosion that tore through the crowd and straight at him. He used all of his symbiote to create a shield behind his back while protecting the boy, barely protecting his left arm. Before he passed out, he heard another boom and what sounded like 2 trains colliding. As you can see, the creature was not yet defeated by the 2 brightest rising stars of the hero world. However, they were able to quickly react, though we do not have a picture of where they are now. Currently, the other members of the vigilante group of the Outsiders is engaged with the creature, and are working to contain it while the civilians are evacuated. Momo and May were watching TV when it spoke quietly. It was terrifying how the hell the reporter was talking about the deaths of potential heroes with such composure. Lemillion had slammed his fist into the ground, causing a plate of earth to lurch in front of the blast. while Venom was seen using his suit to create a sort of shield to protect the boy. Though it didn't entirely put an end to it, it most likely prevented the civilians from being killed. May's line, "This is crazy. I need to make more babies to help them," was humorous, but her attitude wasn't. She was talking incoherently. Momo gave her friend a hug, doing the only thing she could. As Venom entered consciousness again, he let out a moan. He started to stand up, but a sudden sharp pain in his left arm made him stop. It was immobile, and a shard of metal protruded from his bicep. It was rather ironic that he was down to one arm. Lemillion's voice came from beside him, "Your shoulder is dislocated, and I don't really know what else to do to stop this creature." Venom gave a shake of his head and stood up. With his teeth clenched, Venom said, "Go help them. They're not experienced enough to fight this thing yet. I'll think of something. We just need time." The pain was seriously interfering with his thoughts. Lemillion simply nodded before diving back into the battle. "I have no idea how you're going to stop it, kid. I truly only have one thought at this point. Its inside organs will have to be cannibalized." "How dare you even put it forward? That is definitely not what a hero would do. Peter would never do that." Izuku gave a growl through his teeth and then shot his partner a backhanded retort. "I am not Peter Parker. I don't know why you keep missing this. I am Venom, and I am Izuku Midoriya, not Peter." His companion remained silent. "Not because I like it any more than you do, but at this point my arm is totally crippled. There are injured civilians here. Partner, we don't have time to think things through. You must be on my side. I need you on my side for these people. Are you going to do it?" For the time being, all other options have been eliminated by its shock absorption and adaptive resistance. "Venom, please." "All right. But I'm aware that I'll never do this again, and in exchange for my troubles, I want lots of chocolate." Izuku gave a small smile and laughed, but then he felt pain in his side, which made him think of his broken ribs. "You've got it, buddy. Shall we set out to save the city?" Hivemind was using his quirk on the creature, with varying degrees of success. Every few seconds, he could, for some reason, influence it sufficiently to make it docile. Every time the creature was under his control, it would utter the words, "Kill me." It was, to put it mildly, concerning. He looked around at the others. Celsius's suit was mostly burned and torn. The production of acid had reached its limit for Alien Queen. Lemillion had a large cut over his left eye that was gushing blood, and his eye was swollen shut. Overall, they are in need of a miracle. Venom yelled, "Lemillion," as if he was on cue, "we need you to pry its mouth open." Quickly, they all turned to see Izuku mostly naked. His identity was only concealed by the tech lenses and the black face mask. The enormous black writing mass that developed around his right arm was what caught attention. It displayed teeth, dispersed in that same maniacal smile Izuku typically wore when dressing up. Without saying another word, he rushed towards Bakunomu and charged down the crater's side. Lemillion seized the creature, forcing its jaws to open, and Hivemind used his own peculiarity to tame it as much as possible. With a triumphant roar, Venom leapt into the air and pushed his writhing right arm down the creature's mouth. Bakunomu's left arm offered only a little resistance, so the creature did not struggle as much as it ought to have. As the symbiote consumed it, it slowed down until Bakunomu stopped moving this time, permanently. The left arm completely vanished and ceased to breathe. It closed its eyes. Withdrawing his arm from what remained of his initial companion, he experienced many emotions, with regret being the most common. He staggered back a little, though, and was nearly knocked down by Lemillion. He turned them to face the news helicopter and the reassembled crowd, but he said nothing. He glanced at the blonde hero, and with a single movement, Venom's right arm and Lemillion's left, they raised their arms and assumed the victory pose that the former symbol of peace had adopted following his own victorious triumph. They grinned and laughed as the applause started. They knew they had succeeded when the other outsiders moved up beside them. The monster had been stopped by them, and at last, they had become the heroes they had always desired. Izuku was going to be late, really late. You might be wondering, why was he running late? That's because he was late for a lone meeting with May regarding the establishment of their own support business. The plan was to pull a Wayne Enterprises and produce large quantities of high-end technology, deducting their own equipment as internal research and development. In addition to other support company roles, Midoriya Industries would be the new front-runner for the hero tech industry. The idea originated with Venom, as Peter had founded his own business after Felicia convinced him that he was squandering his photographic talent, not that she cared. Izuku was therefore thrilled when Venom brought up the idea. if only as a means of raising his mother's standard of living and contributing to the community. But it was Mina who had kept him up late with bad movies and other stuff. That thought made Izuku blush, and he nearly ran into a building. His fast reflexes are the only thing keeping him from going viral. He was thus running late. His phone lit up and he saw Mei on the caller ID, interrupting his train of thought. Oh no. This is not going well. He surprised himself by hearing Hitoshi's voice when he pressed the answer button. You know she's going to blast you with a sound cannon the second you walk in the door for being late, right? Even though Hitoshi sounded as bored as ever, there was a hint of fondness in his voice when he talked about his 4-year girlfriend. I'm aware, I'm practically there. Simply put, stall them. For that, you have the appropriate tools. Hitoshi sighed at this, but as soon as the phone line died, he started talking, saying, so if I said Mass Effect 3 had a good ending, to loud applause. They had had good fortune over the past 4 years. The mayor of Mustafa Town had personally entered the crater after the League of Villains were apprehended, shook his hand, and given him and his group honorary licenses. For bravery in the field, he had declared. Thus, he had practically realized his dream. He was going to be a pro. But he had also had some bad moments, such as when a child had questioned him about the reason behind the frightening smile on his mask. Izuku had managed to respond coherently only once, of course, with the question, what do you mean my smile is scary? Or the fact that for 4 years in a row he had been the front runner for the title of hero who looks like a villain. He wouldn't be irritable or petty, no, since that would be unfavorable. Mei and Hitoshi, on the other hand, were still in their weirdly endearing but strangely bizarre relationship. Hitoshi still deeply loved her despite the fact that this usually resulted in him testing a lot of bizarre gadgets to counteract his quirk. Though the latter was unavoidable, Shoto and Momo had evolved into an ultra-elite power couple and superheroes. For the most part, Momo's parents had discovered their relationship and had presented them as the single most adorable couple ever at one of their gatherings. From then on, things simply got worse. Thus, Momo was a hero in her own right as well as a designer of hero attire, and Shoto continued to be a member of the Outsiders out of deference to the man who had helped to mold him into the hero he would eventually become. In actuality, Momo had consented to serve as their main supporter for Izuku and Mei's business, Midoriya Industries. Although she would have given them the money in full, Izuku persuaded her to accept a partial loan in addition to a bank loan because she was always happy to help her friends. He and Mei were certain that her insanity at Geniusa would pay off handsomely. Even though they were now in college or preoccupied with hero work, they still got together for dinner at LeBlanc once every 2 weeks. Tetsu and his girlfriend Kendo Itsuka were now officially regarded as members of the Outsiders. They had only recently joined, having both graduated from UA approximately 2 years prior. They were referred to as the Iron Fist duo when they weren't involved with the team. They mostly dealt with low-level street crime. The thing that shocked him the most was how his mother had accepted him as a hero. Although she initially disagreed with some of his actions and the fact that he was essentially a criminal, she later expressed her pride in him after he gave her an explanation of all the things he had accomplished and the people he had helped while in the role of Venom. That, and wept as they squeezed him until he was almost dead. She expressed her happiness that he had been able to fulfill his dream without questioning how he came to have a quirk. Izuku's suit's communication system flashed once more, but this time it read, Mrs. Bakugo, pulling him out of memory lane once more. Once more, his thumb lingered over the button in response. Despite the awkward situation that still existed between him and Bakugo, Mitsuki Bakugo had apologized to him for allowing her son's behavior to continue and expressed her sadness that they had become estranged. Thus, once a month or so, Mitsuki would get together at LeBlanc with Izuku and Mina to discuss life and remember the good old days. He found it difficult to forgive Bakugo, and he was aware that Mina remained irate following his explanation of why Bakugo's mother had apologized to him in the first place. It surprised him that her anger hadn't melted her entire dorm. Mina was a really gregarious and easygoing person to be around, but when she got mad, holy cow, she was scary. How on earth did you manage to survive enormous bad guys, that strange guy with 4 octopus tentacles, and copycats, and yet your 4-year girlfriend still makes you feel afraid when she gets upset? Oh, hi there, buddy. I'm not sure why you're still confused by this. You mentioned that when Felicia got angry, Peter was afraid of her. You essentially claimed that after he devoured her last tub of Ben & Jerry's Americone Dream, he fled to China for a business expo. In order to hide. Izuku sensed his partner trembling. We don't talk about that incident first. At all. After buying her a 20% share in Ben and Jerry's as an apology, Peter spent 2 hours dodging claws and another 2 chained to his bed. I still have nightmares about not having a gender or sexual preference. Alright, I apologize. Yes, after the last battle, Izuku and Venom had only grown closer. Izuku accepted Venom's apology for continuously drawing comparisons between him and Peter. Venom was not as talkative as he once was. Most of his remarks were insulting, such as when he called villains lame ass who looked like C-listers from the Justice Friends, or demanded certain snacks in exchange for being considered the most awesome superpower-giving alien ever. Izuku shook his head and then hesitantly said, "Hello? Izuku. What's up, how are you?" He nearly ran over a lamppost due to her abrupt and loud voice. "Good day, Mrs. Bakugo. How may I assist you?" Izuku, looking like a cartoon character or something, was trying to recover after almost slamming into the post before he spoke. "Oh, please call me Mitsuki. I keep telling you to. I detest formality, as you are aware. It's been a while since we've all sat down to a meal together, so I was thinking we could have dinner with your mom this week." "I think that's a great idea, Mrs." He turned around at her growl over the phone and said, "Mitsuki. But on our typical night, I have something planned with Mina. It's really crucial, you know." Through the phone, he could hear her whistling. "So you finally got the stones to buy the ring." It was more of a discussion about the inherent qualities of fire, such as its heat, than it was a true question. Izuku became distracted as a result, of course, and ran into a bald hero who was accompanied by a man who appeared to be a robot. Izuku mumbled an apology, but the man ignored it with a wave. "Hello?" He awoke from her daze when Mitsuki said, "Yes, I did. I wanted to let her know that she is everything to me, so even though it's nothing fancy. Moreover, that I want to live a lifetime with her." "Oh, what a brat. If you continued to talk like that and I were a few years younger, I would definitely try my hand at you." His expression turned icy, and he began to cough clumsily, which made Mitsuki burst out laughing. "Brat, I'm not serious. Calm down. Simply put, we can reschedule for next week. Enjoy yourself, and please wait to give me any great nieces." The call was terminated with a phone click. That woman was 50 shades of crude and inappropriate, but she was also kind, and although she had accepted Bakugo's death with great sadness, she did not blame Izuku for it. The most startling thing about her first phone call to him was probably her thank you for rescuing her son. Especially after she acknowledged that she knew he was Venom. Though it brought him little solace, knowing that his old friend's family did not hold a grudge helped him come to terms with what he had to do to keep the city safe. Of course, it haunted him still, or at least his sense of being unable to save Bakugo. But instead of treating him like a cinnamon roll, Mina would usually take that as an opportunity to give him a nose flick. Whatever the devil that meant. He had long since given up trying to make sense of some of Mina-isms. He patted the engagement ring he had purchased and shook his head. During his solitary patrols, he had taken to wearing it as a necklace on a chain for good fortune. The big night was tomorrow. Izuku Midoriya would ask Mina Ashido to marry him the next day. The following day. "So let me get this straight. Yeah, you made Hitoshi brainwash Mei and your loan board. Correct. Just because you were running late. Yep, and you were late because there was a cat in a tree." Mina Ashido laughed heartily in the packed restaurant. For once, they weren't dining at LeBlanc, but rather at a restaurant that Sojiro himself recommended. If you could refer to explicit threats as recommendations. "Retrograde. You are not proposing in my restaurant." "What? Why not?" "Because you're taking her here, you stupid person. And you're going to." A cooperative murmur becomes louder. "You get it?" Rewind over thus. Izuku managed to secure a seat at one of Mustafa's more elegant establishments. Although he was aware that Mina wasn't particularly interested in upscale establishments, he had assured her that following Sojiro's advice was crucial to avoid breaking Izuku's legs. And of course Mina agreed, since she thought the whole thing was hilarious. The restaurant itself was fairly well lit, but it was still sufficiently dark to look ostentatious and enigmatic. Mina had a gorgeous appearance. After making love to her while Izuku slept, Venom suggested that she wear a sleek black dress. Her hair was now down to her shoulders and was tied in a ponytail that was hung listlessly over her left shoulder. She had on a pair of golden earrings and wore lipstick that was dark blue. Overall, she caused Izuku to stutter more than he did at their initial meeting. Upon noticing this, she smiled mockingly and said, "Be careful, Tiger. I might come up with some amusing ideas if I keep staring." In any case, this was the restaurant where our favorite couple was having dinner. They had just paid the bill after finishing their entrees. Izuku had now brought them to a place they were quite familiar with. A rooftop overlooking the illuminated cityscape. He had to use some of his power to get them there, and although she had made fun of him for using it as a pretext to shove her against him, they were now snuggled together on a picnic blanket he had set up in advance, enjoying the stars. "So do you recognize this place, Mina?" She pretended to pause and consider. "Well, this is either where you beat the crap out of some scumbag mugger." She laughed and planted a kiss on Izuku's cheek as his head lowered a little. "Or it's where we first kissed after you saved my life." His gaze shot up to meet hers, pausing momentarily on the kind and gentle smile that adorned her face. "You're correct, Mina. That's when you turned into my queen. The way things worked out is funny. You've got yourself a quiet, stuttering, awkward guy." "Why me?" His question was inquisitive. She gave a small chuckle and nudged him. "I think the question you should be asking is, why wouldn't it be you?" She went on, seeing his perplexed look. "Izuku, you saved my life. I'm not sure what else could be considered a corny Hollywood moment to plant a kiss on the girl. Even if you ignore that, I'm inspired every day by your kindness and sense of justice. I could say the same about you, even though you claim that I'm your inspiration these days. Even if you're currently a CEO snob." Izuku winced at her kind words that turned playful. She would definitely make fun of him for being able to get his business loan approved. "However, I must ask Izuku. You brought me up here, but why? I realize you're a little corny, but your actions are just small, commonplace ways of expressing your love for me. Why is this the case?" Izuku moved away from her at this point, reaching into his pocket before getting down on one knee and taking her hand. "I could go on and on about how much you mean to me, Mina Ashido, and how you're my partner in almost everything. However, I believe I'll get right to the point. Will you marry me?" She looked stunned for a moment, then her cheeks turned lilac, and she carefully took the ring and put it on her finger. She put her hand to her mouth and then launched herself at him, slamming him to the ground and repeatedly squealing, "Yesesies, into his chest. Izuku's perspective scratch record. "Let's do this to go over everything from the start. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I wasn't always Venom, as you know. Before I met my alien best friend, I was a bit of a scrawny brat. After that, he rose to hero status, rescued the girl, fell in love with her, assembled a fantastic hero team, won recognition as a hero, and founded an amazing business that the female Frankenstein uses to force her ridiculously brilliant inventions upon other heroes. Who knows? You've heard my story. Later on, there might be more to reveal. But for the time being, I'll run into you later."